Hi, everyone. For those on the call, we'll get started in just a minute. We're waiting for a few folks to join the session today, so thanks for your patience. All right, so it's 6 o'clock. It's the top of the hour. And first of all, we'd like to just welcome everybody to our annual board meeting of the Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon. Thank you for joining us today and giving us your time to learn about the organization and view a typical board meeting, or maybe not so typical since this one will be abbreviated. My name is Alana Carson. I'll talk more about my role at the board in a moment. But we first want to kick off the agenda items, which always starts with approving the February 2025 meeting minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, sounds great. The February minutes are approved. So now we want to move on to the board member introductions. I'll go ahead and start. Again, my name is Alana Carson. I am the board president. I've been president for a short time, since October. Prior to that, I served as both secretary and prior to that, treasurer. I've been with the organization for about 5 years now. My background is in mostly legal technology, but my legal training was in environmental and animal law. So I'm super grateful to be involved in this organization, and thank you for joining. So I'm going to pass this over to our newest board member, Mike McGarr.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Mike McGarr, and I am a brand new member of the board. In fact, this is my very first official meeting as a board member. By way of background, I come out of the financial services industry, spent some 40 years in financial services, including nearly 34 as a portfolio manager and analyst with an investment advisory firm here in Portland called Becker Capital Management. In addition to that, our association, my wife and I, have had a long-standing interest in the Feral Cat Coalition, and I thought this would be a great way to help out.
Great, thank you, Mike. All right, Allie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Alicia Young. I'm an active CPA. I became part of the board in September 2023, and I've been very glad about it. I've served currently as a treasurer, and so that's I'm very glad to be part of such a scholastic and wonderful board, and a very caring board for such an amazing mission.
Great, thank you, Allie. Rebecca?
Yeah, my name is Becca Cherie, and I joined the board in 2022, or I'm sorry, 2023. I am currently the secretary, and I became familiar with Feral Cat Coalition when I was a teenager. They helped me trap cats next to one of the houses that I would go to all the time. So I volunteered with animal organizations for a number of years when I was in high school, and I worked for a local animal shelter for 5 years as well, and was always familiar with the Feral Cat Coalition as a very reliable resource throughout all my years doing animal rescue work. So now I am very happy to be part of the board, and I serve on the development committee and the furball committee, helping plan our annual fundraiser.
Wow, thanks, Becca. All right, Karen and Cliff.
I'm Karen Devaney, and my husband Cliff is next to me. We are retired surgeons who joined the board about a decade ago when we were invited to the furball by a friend, and we got captivated by the organization. And we have a lifelong, both of us, love of cats and have always had cats. Never necessarily feral cats, although I fed a few surreptitiously when I was a child.
Very nice. All right, next on my screen is Sean.
Good evening, Sean Mangum. I've been a general board member for about 8 years. I'm on the development committee. My background was I was adopted by a cat in Spain in 1998, Monte Luis Alejandro, and it's been a love affair with cats ever since. My background, like Mike, is about 30 years in the financial industry, securities and estate planning attorney, and just this is the best board out there.
I agree, Sean. Thank you. All right, Connie.
Hi, I'm Connie Twilliger. I'm a retired estate planning and family law attorney. I started with one of the early furballs about 20 years ago, and then I've been on the board about, well, I think this is my second term. I'm a big senior cat adopter. CJ's sitting on my lap at the moment. So I'm interested in Chris's talk later on about senior cats. I serve on the development committee. So I'll be talking a little bit later about that on our agenda.
Great. Thanks, Connie. All right, Jackie.
Hi, my name is Jackie Nielsen. I'm a veterinarian who actually got involved with Feral Cat Coalition close to its inception, back coming up the 30-year anniversary now, and was doing surgeries in some of those first clinics. I've been on the board for 17 years, so I joined in 2008 for the my board service, and I have cats of my own. Obviously, as a veterinarian, really love cats, but I also love the fact that not only do we help these cats that don't have, they're not in a home necessarily, but they have caregivers, and we help the people that give the care to these cats because they're really heroes and champions out in our communities. So I'm happy that we're able to do that.
Great. Thank you. All right. And Dr. Ellingson, Chris Ellingson, definitely last but not least for sure.
Hi, I'm Chris Ellingson. I've been a cat veterinarian for about 30, cat only veterinarian for about 32 of my 37 years as a vet. I found Feral Cat Coalition after moving to Portland and started spaying, volunteering to spay and neuter kitties about 2000. And then in 2003, I joined the board, and I've been on ever since and did a stint for a while as the board president as well. And I'm thrilled to continue performing surgeries as a contract veterinarian now for Feral Cat Coalition as well.
All right. Thank you so much. You know, one of the things that, just hearing, even though we all work together so much, just hearing everybody's background and commitment, I'm pretty honored and impressed at the background of folks on our board, and very happy to be serving as president. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Karen, who's going to do an abbreviated executive summary report.
Welcome everyone who's here this evening. Really appreciate it, especially knowing that there could be a little bit of wind, maybe rain, maybe a little thunder, making an appearance during the meeting. But thank you for taking the time and for caring about feral cats and spaying and neutering, and your desire to really help improve their lives with us. We are truly grateful you're here. I'm going to cover a little bit of a couple of things going on within the development and education and outreach side, and then I'll be followed by Leah covering more of the clinic and operation pieces, so you kind of get a broad idea of what we're doing. So starting off with Furball is our upcoming event. It's just a little over a month away, so we're in the final details are starting to come together. It's very exciting. Invitations went in the mail this past week. Most of you should have received one by now. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. Our wonderful illustrator and graphic designers, Jeff and Etta Foster, have worked on them again this year. And it's incredible artwork. We're super grateful. And it pairs very nicely with our very fun event, which will include a mystery this year. So people get to kind of solve the mystery of a missing cat. And I won't give away any more details in case you're planning to attend, and hopefully you are, that you can get engaged in that and have some fun. We'll also have a $15,000 match, which is in the invitation. So if you're not coming, if events aren't your thing, that's never going to be on your calendar, you can still participate by making a contribution that will be matched up to $15,000 by the Ed Cadero Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation. So that's exciting for everyone. We'll also have an online auction that runs from May 4th to the 8th. So again, if coming to the event isn't your thing, we have ways to be very inclusive, but if coming is in your thoughts, and that's something you would enjoy, I want to share that we have a lovely live auction that's coming together with both a trip to London I mean, what's a Sherlock Holmes event without some place to go in London? Victoria, a little bit closer. Going to London seems like a little bit of a distance. Victoria is our neighbor to the north that's got a great British vibe. We'll also have some Oregon coast, Central Oregon trips, wine country, wonderful dinner package. The Devanese have an amazing dinner package they've brought to the auction several years. It always changes a little bit, and this year we'll add in a little bit of a mystery as well. So those are a couple of the highlights of things to definitely not miss. I also want to share that board member Sean Mangum and his wife Lisa, and two of their dear friends and wonderful supporters of our program, Ken and Annie Edwards, are the honorary chairs this year. So thank you, Sean, and really pulling together a really beautiful event. We'll also have some, you'll see some posters out in the community and postcards and the rest. If you're somebody who loves to help get materials out in the community, make sure you enter that in and we'll into chat, and we'll follow up with you later to take you up on helping to spread the word about Furball. So again, and if you're wondering, it's May 3rd. Again, May 3rd at the Avenue, which is over in Northeast Portland. A great venue, and hope you can come. The next thing we're planning is in June, and it's called geocaching. Probably are aware of what geocaching might be, where you use GPS coordinates to go find different treasures. Well, this time we're making it geocaching. So put your cat ears on and get out in the community and go find a few hidden treasures. And we'll have winners, we'll have prizes, just a great way to explore parts of Portland, some of our supporters, some new supporters. You know, it's all kind of a mystery. I'm not going to tell you where any of them are, but there's going to be 9 because cats have 9 lives. We're going to have 9 locations to go out and have fun looking for. So that's going to run in June. And it will culminate at our open house. So on the 25th of June, we're doing our open house. And that corresponds with the very first clinic we ever held, which was June 25th, 1995. So 30 years ago on that day. It's a Wednesday, and it's going to be from 3 to 7. So it allows people to come, you know, mid-afternoon to after work. So it's very, you know, hopefully works for everybody's schedule. We're going to do all sorts of fun, different activities, including awarding some of the geocaching prizes. So please mark your calendars for that. Love to see you there and really celebrate what you've helped to make possible. 30 years of providing this care to cats in the community doesn't come by accident. And we're really, really grateful to be here. And then the last thing I want to cover is that we have our Cat Safe at Home program, which is part of our education and outreach. And that does the Catio tour. If you haven't been on it, I certainly encourage you to take a look in the future. If you've got a cat who might like some safe outdoor time, it's a great way to learn about what's out in the community. But this year, we're very excited. We have a brand new portable catio that was created by Catio Craftsman, a longtime supporter of our catio program. And it is a wonderful 4x6 catio where each of the different sections has a different fencing material so that people can get an idea of what it might look like, be able to ask questions about it, maybe, you know, how it feels, what look they like. So when they're building their catio, they get just a really nice example of options available to people. It will be displayed at Coyote Palooza, which is an event on May 31st in the park blocks, which is raising awareness that coyotes do live in our community. It's a program we work closely with because cats and coyotes are a conflict point. Cat Safe at Home talks about how cats may prey on wildlife and how we can protect cats and wildlife, and coyotes are then on the other side of that preying on our cats. And so we really do want to kind of work on this issue from both sides, both with the conservation and bird groups and also with the coyote groups, to really get messages out that can keep cats safe. So you can check out more of that on our website as well. But those are a couple of the highlights of what's going on right now. And I will now turn it over to Leah.
Great, thanks, Karen.
Hello, everybody. Leah. I'm medical director for the Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon, and the fur ball sounds like so much fun this year. It's going to be amazing. It's fun every year, but all the mystery in the games, it sounds pretty cool, and the cat thing. So in February, I know we're well into March now, almost the end, but yeah, in February we saw 688 cats. That was just 2 under what we had projected of 690 for the month. So that was really good. Our average that we normally see is around 620 for the month. So we're happy that we're able to provide more surgery capacity so we can help more cats. And that also accounted for, like, we had 2 days that we were closed because of weather for that snow in February. Our average donation for February was $23.70 per cat. Our average overall for this fiscal year is $26.48 a cat. It does take us a little over $50, maybe $52 per cat for the services that we provide, just for the hands-on, the supplies that we use. It's not just having to do with keeping our lights on or anything else. So we really appreciate the fundraising support that we have, and Karen does such an amazing job with it as well. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to do as many surgeries as we do. And you know, every day, I just have to say, every day, I see a lot of cats. Today, I don't know, 30 something, but usually it's, a lot of cats every day, every week. It adds up, to the thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of cats. And it can be a little overwhelming to think there's this many cats out there, but how much more overwhelming would it be if there was an organization like Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon to help us, to help just kind of stem the tide a bit and improve the lives of every single cat that passes through our doors. So we appreciate your support. We are on track where our goal this year is to do around 8,000 surgeries. I projected around 8,300 just to kind of make sure we hit that. And we're about halfway through, and it's about 6 months into our fiscal year. So we're right on track. We're about to hit some of our busiest months in the summer, and the kittens are coming. So, anybody who knows me knows I like a goal and like to exceed the goal. So hopefully we'll do more than that. But if not, we're doing the best that we can every single day in our clinic to do is to help as many cats as we can, which results in helping a lot of people. Like Jackie mentioned, the caregivers who are helping the cats and feeding the cats and bringing the cats in are key to what we do. So we appreciate you all. That's what I got.
Nice. Thanks, Leah. Lana, you were
Leah.
muted.
Yes, I was muted. I apologize. So now we're going to get to the committee reports. I'll go first, since mine should be a quick report. So as I mentioned, I'm Alana Carson. I'm also, in addition to being the president, I'm also the chair of the governance committee. And so overall, our role in the governance committee is to oversee the general board of directors' functions and responsibilities. We also do things like ensure compliance with state and federal regulations, which include making sure our bylaws are in accordance with Oregon law. And some of our responsibilities include maintaining and updating those bylaws, as well as things like strategic planning, any kind of board and committee evaluation, and ensuring that we're keeping proper meetings, reports, and procedures intact. So one of the things that we're currently working on, and we're several months in, is our upcoming strategic plan. So the organization does a strategic plan anywhere from every 3 to 5 years. And our goal this year is to really identify what are the goals of the organization and what are the objectives in order to meet those goals. And so we're currently working on what those objectives are. And recently I just met internally with both Leah and Karen, and we went ahead and reviewed some of the operational systems of FCCO so that we can evaluate real measurable objectives that are going to be part of that strategic plan. So it's been a really exciting process as we go through this. And we tend to meet as a committee about every 2 to 3 months. So We will have more information when that strategic plan comes out, if anybody would like information on that, but that's a little bit about the governance committee. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ally, and she can talk about our finance committee.
Thank you, Alana. The finance committee is very interesting. We deal with the financial aspects of the organization. There's a regular monthly financial analysis and reporting that's prepared and submitted to the board and discussed, and oftentimes getting very good input from Karen or Leah regarding some activities. And so there's this financial transparency that happens here with FCCO when such review process takes place. And also part of the finance committee is also updating any financial policy matters or reviewing so that we get closer to a more perfect organization. So it's a good review and process. FCCO had a wonderful reporting that is in compliance with IRS and state regarding the informational filings that are done. So that was done, the 990 and the state equivalent, and the financial statement review, which is done by an independent CPA firm. That was done, and it was a good report. So what's good is that we cooperate if there's a question or if there's a matter to clarify in such reporting to make it useful for the reader. We provide our input to the CPA firm, and graciously they take it and they make whatever edits have to be done. So it's always good to review the work that's done by professionals or others. And so that's a very good thing. Also, we make sure in the finance committee that FCCO has good stewardship of the great trust and wonderful and kind-hearted support that the community gives. And we are extremely grateful. Because of that, we see FCCO has a very strong base and very good financial. And we appreciate that. We make sure that the funds are being used for what the programs call for and the mission. And so we're eternally grateful, as we're all interested in the well-being of these beautiful creatures that are really art in motion. We thank you. And if by any chance you're in the financial services, we will welcome you with open arms, just like Mike just made our days, our whole year. Thank you, Mike. So we appreciate you all, but that's a snapshot of the finance committee.
Thank you, Ally. All right, Connie, can you talk to us a little bit about the development committee?
Thank you. I've got my hat here. I'm all ready. Maybe I should do it this way. I want to talk about the development committee. I've been on about 2 years, and we've got 5 wonderful people that serve with us. We meet every other month. We kind of have a pronged approach. We don't have any government help for fundraising. So what our committee does is try to follow the finances and figure out ways to help support the surgery, support Leah and what she does so wonderfully. So we look for ways to raise money. We look at ways to get auction items. We just try to be creative and come up with everything from venues to ideas on how to be creative and in just every possible way. And our kind of second prong to that is to find out ways that we can show appreciation to all those who support us. Because one of the reasons that I'm on this committee and on this board is because I've watched it over the years say every dollar given is how can we help the cats, not on how we do other things, but how it can be directive. And you can have a very donative intent, but unless you have a good business model and take care of everything, you see a lot of charities kind of go out of business. And so they take really good care, and Ally is a great help on this, and the other board members, in keeping all our finances in order, and Ally and everybody else is working on the structure. And so we try to give the creative ideas and understand that kind of money is neutral, but it can do some really, really wonderful things. So if you are interested, you don't need to be on the board to be on our committee. You can come. If you're creative, you want to participate in everything from art to venues to, how, but particularly we want to thank people. And so come up with creative ways to show our appreciation for all our wonderful people that support us. So that's what we do.
All right, there we go. Does anybody on the board have any other business they'd like to discuss before we conclude? Okay, so that officially ends our board component of today's presentation. So now I will pass it to Karen.
We are moving into the presentation portion of the evening, and it's such an honor to have two truly incredible presenters with us tonight. First will be Dr. Chris Ellingson, who you met moments ago, followed by Dr. Emilio DeBas. And Chris is going to be talking about the caring for your senior cat. If you don't have that as an issue right now, you will as your kitty ages. So this is good information now and then. And then Dr. DeBes will be talking about cats and the bird flu, which is, very topical, and we're really going to get some really good information on its background and what's going on with that. So I'd like to introduce Chris. She has been involved with FCCO, as she mentioned, for decades. She is our longest serving president, as well as probably one of our longest serving high quality, high volume spay neuter surgeons. So you're the full package there, Chris, and we're super grateful. You've dedicated your life to not only cats, but also helping feral cats and spay neuter particularly. So all but 5 of her 37 years in practice have been with feline only practices. So this is a dedicated feline veterinarian. And she has 2 senior cats of her own. Both of them will be 17 in August. And so her family knows what we're experiencing and what we're all navigating when you've got a senior kitty in your home. So we're very honored that you're here tonight, Chris. And when Chris's presentation is done, we will move into Dr. DeBes's, and we'll have all the questions and answers at the end. So any questions you have for Chris or Dr. DeBes, please do make sure you enter them into the chat. I'm sorry, into the Q&A. See, I said it wrong. Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to incorporate as many as we can. So let me pass it over to Chris Ellingson, and you're on, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. Senior kitties have been some of my favorite patients over the years. And I mean, kittens are great, of course, but as they get older, and I've seen some grow from kittenhood to age, 18 or 19 over the years. And it is a real pleasure to take care of these kitties with their people. And we get to see them more and more as they get older because we want to follow them up more closely. I do want to actually give a shout out to Devin at FCCO for putting my slideshow together for me. And she's actually going to be the one who's changing my slides. So thank you, Devin. Let's move on to the next slide then. Devin, you there?
Right. Why, it will be there in just a moment.
Okay. We figured Devin had more experience with this than I do with my little laptop at home. Slideshow.
Right. It worked just perfectly before, right? Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'll do
The
one at a
topics.
time.
Do one more. I know, one at a time.
Ooh, there we go.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I appreciate everything. So the topics we'll just touch on are going to be a cat age compared to humans, because it's not the same, of course. Some senior cat diseases and conditions, some medicating tips, arthritis in particular, because that's something a lot of kitties have, just like old people. And then moving into comfort care and enrichment for our senior kitties at home. And lastly, end of life care. Now you can go to the next one, Devin. This is a great little graphic that talks about calculating your cat's age compared to a person. Though they kind of call the first year of a kitty's age maybe 15 of human years, but honestly, when you look at a female kitty can have kittens herself when she's only 5 months, that really is more like about 15 years for a human. So honestly, it's kind of a little bit of a estimate there. But once we get into the mature adult kitty, and we call them mature adults from like 2 till 10, that's when those years now become more like every 4 years of a human year is about 1 year of a cat year. And we start calling our kitties seniors when they're 11, and that translates to 61 years in human years. And I guess I take into that is kind of like a senior. I guess that's what we're considered. But I certainly see my share of super seniors at age 18, 19, 20 that are comparable to those people that are in the high 80s and 90s. So bravo to those kitties. And sometimes they are just going along really great. And it's because we can have such good care for them these days. Next slide, please. Some of the diseases you'll see in kitties that you may take your veterinarian to and find out by the vet wanting to run blood tests and do their exam are chronic kidney disease, hypertension, hyperthyroidism, heart disease, diabetes, just like in people, chronic gastrointestinal diseases, certainly cancers, and then, as I mentioned, arthritis. A lot of these diseases are things that have some of the same symptoms. You might see weight loss, decreased appetite, or on the flip side, sometimes abnormally increased appetite despite weight loss. You might see decreased or increased activity levels, vomiting, fecal changes that you might note in the litter box, either really soft feces or maybe hard BMs like constipation. Maybe increased vocalization, your kitty's making more noises at night, especially at nighttime. And sometimes there's other behavior changes that I kind of suggest that kitty might be having decreased vision or hearing. So many of these conditions, your veterinarian will hopefully help you diagnose. And there are treatment options, whether it's an actual cure or ongoing treatment, but many of them are long-term treatments for care. Next slide, please. And they require medications. So medications can be a scary thing for everybody to think about having to give their kitties medications, but it's always best to make sure your veterinarian is, when they're consulting with you about options and some tips of how to give them, because some types of forms of medications are much easier to use for one particular kitty and then for another. Most common forms are pills or tablets, which some are actually made specifically for cats. Otherwise, we often use dog medications that are kind of off-label for kitties or human medicines as well. There are many liquid preparations for cats on the market that, because sometimes giving a syringe with or a little dropper with a liquid, it can be easier to give to a cat and maybe more accepted. Capsule form is another way. Some actually come in capsules, or we can order as a veterinarian as a prescription, order medication made into capsule form from a compounding pharmacy. And another way I've used capsules is some of my kitty patients, such as some of our heart patients that are on multiple drugs. We have them get a bigger capsule and they can put both the little pills into one capsule. So they're only having to give one dose at a time instead of 2 different medications. Topical medications, think of like flea and tick control. And in cats, when we're applying those, we do suggest not putting them back by the shoulder because pretty agile cats can get back there and lick. So we do suggest putting it more the back of the skull, separating the hair and getting it right down to the skin. And just be sure if you have a housemate kitty at home as well, that they're kept apart for a while so they aren't automatically licking that off. Give it a few hours for that medication to dry and get absorbed into the kitty's skin. There are also other drugs that are delivered as a transdermal route applied directly to the skin. We do have a few that are specifically made for cats, which is awesome that the studies are done for the cats. But we can also, as veterinarians, have certain drugs made up through the compounding pharmacy, again, as a transdermal. These medications are applied by the client at home, and we do want to find an area that has less hair. And so in cats with their ears sticking up, the inner part of the ear, the top part, doesn't usually have any hair. So that's typically the spot we suggest applying the medication. We do want the client to wear either a glove or a little finger cot on their finger so that the kitty gets the application. You don't absorb it through your skin on your finger. So those are always really important things that the pharmacy goes over with you as well. Other forms of drugs can be injectables, and one of the most common ones we think about would be insulin for diabetic kitties. But I've also prescribed steroid injectables for clients that have a really difficult time with an oral medicine, but yet kitty might not mind literally having a tiny needle injected under the skin. And the other thing we very commonly use in older kitties are subcutaneous fluids. So fluids delivered under the skin on a regular basis at home to help some of our chronic kidney patients that are a little dehydrated get medication that way. We also have mostly supplements in these forms, powders, gels, and pastes that can be mixed in food and water. So usually these are either unflavored or have a fairly decent flavor, or that can be masked easily with food or water to deliver some supplements. And lastly, diets can also be medicine, especially the prescription foods. In particular, there is one that's designed for hyperthyroid cats that they don't require the medicine if they eat this diet specifically. So it's a very specific prescription diet, and the kitty cannot eat anything else. But there are other diets that we use as medicine. Thinking about some of our arthritic patients do have the diets that have the joint support. We have GI diets that might have fibers or probiotics in them, and also hypoallergenic diets for those allergic kitties. So lots of different ways kitties can get medicine. Next slide, please, Devin. And this is just an example of a kitty wrapped in her burrito to keep her little front paws from batting away your hands with the syringe. She's getting a liquid preparation of some medication. I also very frequently have used baby food. Meat-only baby foods such as turkey or beef or ham. It's very flavorful for kitties. Often we can mix either a liquid or crushed up tablet into a little bit of baby food and have them lap that right up if they like baby food. Churro has kind of taken over that role for many kitties, and I've got one right here. My kitties get it all the time for some of their medications, and they love it. So a pro tip would be to get your kitty trained early on in life as a kitten to liking to eat canned foods, treats like churros, or other treats such as pill pockets that are the squishable little treats that you could mold around a pill and hopefully pop that down your kitty to get the medication in. I don't have any specific videos of how to give a kitty a pill or a liquid, but there are many on YouTube, and I really appreciate the ones that are made by veterinarians and veterinary technicians who do this all the time. So those are just some of the ideas. Just if you're having troubles, make sure you check with your veterinarian and see if there's a different form of medication that could be prescribed for that particular medication that your kitty requires. Next slide, please. I also wanted to focus on arthritis, and so many kitties have arthritis, also known as osteoarthritis, OA, or degenerative joint disease, DJD. And this occurs when the cartilage that's at the end of the bones wears away within the joint so that the bones rub against each other, causing inflammation and, of course, pain. In cats, it commonly affects the elbows, their hips, their low back along the spine, their knees, shoulders, and even their little ankles, their hocks. So they're definitely places that we particularly see that. This arthritis can be caused by old injuries, even a birth defect, past surgery, and then with chronic use of the joint, that can cause progression of the irritation. And certainly being an overweight kitty, having to walk around with a lot of extra weight can put a stress on some of those diseased joints. And that will progress over time and can really severely affect the quality of life of the kitty.
Because he
Next
was
slide,
in
please.
connection with other people that she knew.
Oh, next slide,
Eric
please.
says he left Amber sleeping in the park while he went for a drive. After a while,
I don't
he
know what
got
that is.
worried, so he headed
I think
back to
we
see
need,
if she was
Leah, can you mute
Finding her
your,
still there, he thought that she
I
would
think
be
it's
fine and
somebody,
decided to leave her there.
And for
Little
somebody
did
else.
he realize Amber would almost die that evening.
I think he was surprised that
I will just continue here. Yeah, this is my actually my Katie Blue Star's X-ray. Her head would be at this end where my arrow is to your left. It's not in the picture. And this is her spine. All the white things are bones. These heavy white things are bones. So this would come down to her hips and her rear legs and her tail. And this is her front legs. The areas I've circled poorly with this black is areas where there's arthritis. And these are her front legs that are kind of overlapping here, but these elbow joints should not have this bony proliferation here. This should be nice and smooth. And along her spine, I've circled areas like, if you look at her cervical spine, each little vertebrae here looks like a little rectangle, but as we keep going down, try her lumbar spine along her back, they start having these little bony bridging down at the bottom. In fact, in some of these areas, it's almost connecting between the different vertebrae. As you can imagine, a kitty that's normally very agile and can twist around and jump around is not going to be able to do that very well when their bones are almost fused. And she even has some of that going on in her tail. So it's sad. She's got a lot of arthritis. Next slide, please. The symptoms, arthritis, can vary, but cats being cats really don't show us a lot of what's going on with them. So as veterinarians, we rely on you as the client and the kitty caretaker to be observant and let us know when your kitty's doing things that she didn't used to do, or maybe isn't doing things she used to do. So it's really important, and we love it when you get videos of your kitties for us. That really shows us what they're doing at home, because they really don't like to walk around the exam room for us and exhibit their discomfort in front of us. So some of these symptoms that we kind of can see with arthritis would be stiffness upon getting up, not wanting to jump up and down as much or up as high as they used to, and certainly avoiding the places that they used to jump up that require them to jump up to a certain level, like the back of the couch or a cat tree. They may be more reluctant to go up and down stairs or just be slower. They may start getting more irritable and even aggressive if they're handled where you might actually accidentally irritate a sore joint. They may become less playful and even to the point of hiding and not wanting to be disturbed. On the flip side, they may want more attention if they're hurting and they want your comfort. A lot of these kitties aren't able to manipulate their body around to get to groom as well as they used to, and might end up with mats in areas like along their back or their underside. And on the flip side of that, if there's a sore joint, say if you bump your elbow, you're going to rub it, right? Well, if a kitty's got a sore elbow, she might overgroom that elbow. And so you might even see some hair loss. And one of the things that's kind of distressing as kitties get older is with arthritis is they may start going potty outside the litter box or no longer cover their waist. So those are things that it may simply be because the litter box is down in the basement and she's painful, doesn't want to go down there, or it's a litter box that has too high a side that she can't get into, or there's some of those great automatic litter boxes now, but they look like you have to really jump up inside of them, and they might not be able to do that anymore. So those are things to be aware of that we may need to discuss. So while there isn't a cure for arthritis, there's many things we can do to help slow the progression and to alleviate pain, to help improve their quality of life. So working together with you, we can kind of make a treatment plan. It's really advised never to give any supplements or medications, especially for pain, without consulting a veterinarian, because certain things that we use for ourselves, like ibuprofen and Tylenol, are toxic to cats. And we do have alternatives that we can use for their pain. Next slide, please. So here's some arthritis treatment that your veterinarian would discuss with you. There are a lot of joint supplements that are used for anti-inflammatory, for inflammation, and also say cartilage support, but we also have pain medications as well. Weight loss if needed, we can help set a weight loss plan to slowly lose weight to ease those joints. There's actually nutrition. I think I mentioned earlier that there are joint support diets that have some of the supplements in them as ingredients. And while I know kitties will limit their exercise, it is still important to do some gentle exercise with them, and even kind kind of rubbing down the spine and right along the spine, like my kitty that has that arthritis, she seems to really enjoy right along the muscles along the spine when I kind of almost like an acupressure down there, but helping them with scratching on the scratching post to get those limbs moving and get the blood flowing, and even just gentle play, their normal play activity doesn't have to be leaping around like the youngsters. They can just, go across the floor with something to keep their mind active as well. And there are alternative treatments that are available through certain veterinary practitioners, such as acupuncture, massage, laser, and of course, chiropractic care. And the things you can do in your home to accommodate are also really helpful. And that goes right into our next slide, please. Senior cat comfort care. Some of my favorite things, of course, for these kitties are soft padded beds all over the place, wherever the kitties like to hang out. And the heated ones are even better because especially the ones that not necessarily heating pad, but they will only heat to the kitty's body temperature and only go on when the kitty lays on it. That's going to make them feel much better. As far as those litter box situation, maybe some larger, more shallow-sided litter boxes, or at least one with a cut down side so kitty can get in more easily. These kitties that have a little less mobility, or if they've gotten a little chubby, need a bigger box to be able to manipulate in. And a lot of them are urinating more frequently because of their senior kitty diseases. So they need to have more areas to be able to maneuver in and not soiled, so they won't use a litter box if it's too soiled. And so certainly multiple sites, and again, staying on the same level where kitty doesn't have to go up and down stairs. Floor surfaces can also be a problem for these kitties that aren't walking as well. So surfaces that provide a good grip for better traction. So you don't want area rugs that they can slip on, but if they have a kind of traction on the underside of them that they can walk on is going to help. I also really love raised food and water dishes. I can certainly see those kitties that they don't have to bend their neck down if that's painful. And I love water fountains because that encourages these kitties to drink water, which is what we really want because older kitties tend to develop dehydration, and that will encourage them to kind of drink and even play in the fountain. And that leads right into helping manage constipation. Kitties that are painful along their spine or their hip area, it's going to be more difficult for them to posture to defecate. So they may avoid that and then, of course, develop constipation, especially if they're a little dehydrated. So work with your veterinarian if that seems to be becoming a problem. There's lots of things we can offer. Next slide, please. This is just some examples. Of course, there's a kitty drinking out of the water, a water fountain. Below that is a litter box that my husband developed for our kitty, Blue Star, who's sitting in her heated bed. Her heated bed is actually the brown one that's plugged into the wall behind her. But as you can see, she's got multiple padded bedding there, and that's kind of where she hangs out pretty much all the time now because she doesn't get around very well. So she's on the floor, but she has a nice view of seeing everybody and seeing outside. And I think this is kind of her happy place these days. Next slide, please. So continuing with other comfort care for kitties at home, be aware that old kitty nails don't slough off like they used to when they're younger. So they're can become very thick and overgrow, and then can even eventually overgrow into the pad of their toes, causing infection. So I do recommend that kitty nails be trimmed every 6 to 8 weeks, whether that's at home or through a groomer, but there are certainly ways to do that. And then other hygiene issues, such as making sure that they're not getting soiled under their tail if they're having difficulty grooming there. And also, as we mentioned earlier, regular combing to help remove undercoat so that that doesn't mat up, since kitty may not be able to groom as well anymore. As far as the hygiene under the tail, sometimes a sanitary clip with little clippers to remove long hair from a long-haired kitty will help prevent that as well. Certainly you can offer the little pet steps and ramps for them to get up onto beds and couches to enjoy their time up higher. With those kitties that are maybe having some vision changes, a nightlight or two around the house so they can see better in the dark and make it to the litter box and their food while it's overnight. And lastly, I really do encourage that these senior kitties have exams done at least every 6 months so that we can help you detect and manage some of these common age-related illnesses and arthritic changes earlier before they get a chance to get out of hand, where there's less we're able to offer you. I Next slide, please. Yeah. Moving on to kind of the last thing I talk about, of course, is end of life. And our kitties, when they're getting to be senior kitties, they've had a good long life with us, and we also really want to make sure they have a good passing as well. I know everybody has different feelings about that, but when we get to this point of where our old kitties are pretty much on hospice care and on medications or doing what we can to help them feel comfortable, it might not be long before their quality of life starts to suffer, and that needs to be a consideration. And as a veterinarian, I'm really an advocate for the patient, and I'm strongly very comfortable with offering humane euthanasia as a gift I can give to my kitty patients. And I encourage you to think of that as a kindness you can offer for your fellow friend in your home as well. This is a difficult decision, but I think if you plan ahead and talk about it with your veterinarian, it can become a more peaceful passing in the long run. Next slide, please. There are 2 slides here, but this is just an example of a quality of life scale that can be really helpful in determining how is your kitty's quality of life. You've kind of gotten used to things with the kitty, but there gives you options of things to consider. Are they hurting? Are they eating? How's their hydration? How's their hygiene? And next slide, please. The other things, how are they getting around? And adding up these scores that you can do this gives you kind of, well, how many good days are they having over bad days, and help you make that decision. If there's more bad days, then maybe it is time to have the discussion. We're really fortunate in Portland that we have numerous veterinarians that have home euthanasia services. I do know that Lap of Love has an awesome website that has a similar quality of life scale and even a little diary that you can do day to day, so you can get a feel for how things are going for your kitty. So those are really great services, so kitty doesn't have to, for the last visit, end up going in a carrier to the vet clinic, and this can be much less stressful for the family. And many of these places also have very beautiful, lovely tributes and remembrances that you can arrange as well. And do remember that quality of life isn't just your kitty's quality of life, it's you and your family's quality of life as the caregivers. So sometimes it just gets hard, and you do need to consider that and be kind to yourself as well. That's pretty much what I had to say. Quickly, I know, but there is so much. I'm sure I could have talked a long time. And as Karen mentioned, we'll be taking questions and answer them after Dr. DeBus has a chance to speak. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Ellingson, Chris, for that. As a pet parent to 2 senior cats as well, not quite as old as yours. Mine are at 15. All of that's just really relevant information. So we're really grateful for it. So thank you for that. Now it's my honor to introduce Dr. Emilio DeBess. He serves as the public health veterinarian for the state of Oregon under the Oregon Health Authority. In his role, he focuses on the intersection of human and animal health, particularly zoonotic diseases, and those are diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans. He's also a member of the Companion Animal Parasite Council, which provides up-to-date information on parasites in dogs and cats, along with treatment guidelines. In his current position, he oversees several grants, conducts investigations, and provides consultative services to medical providers, veterinarians, the public health community, and the public. One of the most pressing concerns in public health has been and continues to be rabies, but more recently, there's been a high focus on avian influenza. And I just personally, he's a wonderful human being, as well as an amazing resource for us to have with us tonight. And we're so grateful, Dr. DeBess, for you sharing your kind of insights on some very topical information about cats specifically and their relationship with avian influenza. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Right, so hello everybody. I'm Emilio DeBess, and I has been working as a state public health veterinarian. Zoonotic diseases, anything that is transmitted from animals to humans, has been what I've been working on. But now we have learned so much more about animal to animal transmission of disease and then on to humans, or even to humans, from humans to animals, that it becomes a little bit more of a complicated, complex situation, but very interesting regardless. So we'll talk about avian influenza a little bit, and just I'll give you a little bit of background, what I've seen over the years with influenza, especially related to cats. So next, and my phone number is there, by the way. I'm always happy to answer the phone. Obviously, don't put it in the bathroom wall, but feel free to give me a call if you have any questions. My job is to consult with people and to be able to provide as much information as possible. So next. All right. So where do influenza viruses come from? And I think I wanted to start with a kind of the basic understanding of where does influenza come from. And it really, if you see the chart there, you realize how many different animals are there. But at the center of everything is aquatic birds. So aquatic birds are really responsible for the creation, if you want to call it that way, of the development of avian influenza. And with that, we know that they're the primary reservoir for this particular virus. What has happened over the years is now we see this particular influenza virus moving from one animal to another and even onto humans. So as you can see there, it can actually go to many different animals. And the understanding is that the virus actually has the ability to change and change in such a way that it's actually able to infect animals that it hasn't infected before. It also has the ability to change in very significant ways and actually create things like pandemics, for example, in which it affects a large number of individuals, that it becomes part of the genome of the individual and then creates large outbreaks. So it's a very interesting virus. And the reason why is because as it's replicating, it makes a lot of mistakes, which is why, for example, you get a different influenza vaccine every year, right? Because as it's replicating through people after person after person after person, is making mistakes. And by the time the comes March, April, May, where there's no influenza, the virus that we started with is somewhat different from the one that we ended up with. So we now have to use that particular virus to make vaccines so you can be protected next year. So going back to the aquatic birds, birds are like retired people. They travel during the winter, they find the warmer places, and then return to their native place during the summer. So they're always looking for that warm spot. So there are what we call flyways, and these flyways are basically they start usually in the Alaska and the North Pole area, and they travel all the way along the different parts of the United States and the world to areas where it's usually warmer. And as they fly through from Alaska to Chile, for example, they obviously stop and potentially can then transmit an influenza virus, whether it's H5N1 or another one, to other birds in the area or to other animals. So aquatic birds have the ability to fly south and north throughout the year, and with that they move the influenza virus. So what usually happens is that there's a mixing of viruses when they are in Alaska or in the South Pole, and they actually are able to then carry it with them as they travel through. They may not necessarily survive, but throughout the process and while they're sick, they're actually able to transmit the disease to the local birds and then, obviously replicate and continue that infection moving through the different populations. As you can see here, influenza virus has affected many different animals. The latest ones, we talked about cows. Obviously, for the longest time, we never thought a cow could actually get influenza. And here you have, cows can get influenza. That's because the virus has made replicated and has made mutations and changes as it's replicating to actually adapt itself to cows. The same thing is with cats. I don't know if you remember back when swine flu in 2008, 2009 showed up, they asked the veterinarian infectious disease people saying, do dogs and cats, would they ever get this? And the answer was, no, that's not a disease that they usually get. They won't get infected. And sure enough, we were proven wrong. Oregon actually happened to have the first case of cat swine influenza. And that actually happened from a family that became ill with swine influenza in the Albany area. And then they had 3 cats in the household, and all 3 cats were infected with swine influenza. That's the first report that was ever published on this particular situation. Before that, we didn't realize that cats could actually get or were that susceptible to influenza viruses. So we know that humans can pass it on to animals, and we know that animals can pass it on to humans. So we have now the moving both ways. And then since then, we've known that, for example, ferrets are very susceptible to influenza, and they're used for research purposes, trying to understand the influenza virus in humans as well. So many animals could actually get influenza, and I think at this point the sky is the limit, right? We don't what we thought before as some animals may not be able to get influenza, such as cats. Yes, they can get influenza, and they are actually, because it's a new virus to them, because it's a new illness to them, they happen to be extremely susceptible and usually have a very high mortality rate, meaning they tend to die from the disease. Next. So the background is influenza virus was first discovered in the 1800s, and as it moves on through time, it can actually causes multiple outbreaks, including the Spanish flu, which actually was, the biggest outbreak that we've seen in the 1900s, related to an illness that could have actually been prevented by the use of vaccine. Obviously, in the 1910, 1920s, the vaccine for influenza was not readily available. Next. So we then learn about that this virus actually can mutate and can change. And not only that, but it's able to connect or merge with another virus and actually create a new virus. So it has the ability to not only change itself, but actually combine with other viruses and create a new virus. And the one that we're talking about right now is H5N1, which is probably the combination of an H5 bird virus that we had somewhere, excuse me, in Alaska with another virus, creating this particular new virus. Influenza has 2 different proteins. One of them is the N protein, and the other one is the H protein, and that's how they usually are defined by people. So when you get sick, you get H1N1 or H3N2. That's just a different way of calling or naming the virus itself. Sorry. Next. So highly pathogenic avian influenza has been seen in the United States. The latest type of influenza since 2022. And since then, we've seen a number of different animals get influenza. In this time around, the feline or cats actually became infected with influenza. A lot of it was potentially related to cows getting infected with influenza, cats living in a dairy situation where they were getting milk and milk was contaminated with influenza and then affecting cats. So multiple ways in which a cat can actually get infected. One of them is by consuming milk that it's actually infected from cows, or consuming the carcass or the meat of an animal such as a turkey or a chicken that could potentially get or has died of influenza. Next. So you may have seen in the news that a couple of different food items related to raw food were recalled because of avian influenza, specifically H5N1. And this actually, even though it's called Northwest Naturals, it was only packaged here. So they were actually getting thick turkey meat from, sorry, from Minnesota. And that they didn't know that these animals were infected with avian influenza. It came to Oregon, it was packaged here, and then sold to the public because it's raw, because it hasn't had any treatment at all. Then it became a source of influenza for cats that were consuming this particular food. There's another one, which was Wild Coast raw food, which also had the same problem. The meat that was obtained to actually put together this food happened to be contaminated with avian influenza, and people just didn't know about it. The producers, meaning, didn't know about it, and they transported the meat, which then was prepared and then fed to cats, and these cats ended up with getting infected with avian influenza. Next. So we now have multiple groups actually looking at avian influenza. Oregon Department of Agriculture, Washington Department of Agriculture. They're responsible for testing foods. They got a grant to test animals as well. So we're all kind of working together, putting information together about what these animals, what they should or should not be getting. We're learning about clinical symptomatology and just understanding a little bit more as to what's going on. So multiple agencies are involved. I think even Fish and Wildlife to a point is involved in this process. And when we have conversations about avian influenza or meetings related to avian influenza, as you can imagine, there's hundreds of people, or at least 100 people just participating, just because there's so many agencies involved in this. Next. So we know that cats can be susceptible to H5N1 or avian influenza. And you have what you see here is a kind of a timeline of what we have seen in Oregon. Multiple cases, most of them fed raw pet food, which was from turkeys that came from Minnesota that were infected with H5N1. And a lot of these cats were usually indoor cats, not outdoor cats. We've had 2 outdoor cats in Lynn County in the Albany area that were exposed to a flock, a chicken flock that was depopulated based on related to H5N1, and they, just by contacting and becoming in contact with the fecal material of these birds, became infected with avian influenza. So what we see is potentially multiple ways in which cats can get infected, not only by walking around where birds have defecated with H5N1 and then licking themselves, by consuming raw meat that it's infected with avian influenza, and also by drinking milk from cows that have been affected with avian influenza as well. Next. So the clinical presentation is really what has everybody has surprised a lot of people. And the reason why is because we know that birds usually get sick and die, and you usually don't see much of anything. But cats, being cats, and the way that they hide disease and infections and and illnesses, pretty much do the same thing. Next. So what we see is, in some cases, and not all, in fact, most cases usually end up just dying of the disease without any clinical symptoms that people can visualize, but a lot of them have developed lethargy and anorexia, sometimes a fever. Um, if you think about influenza, you think about respiratory disease, and you think about, well, that should be the primary clinical symptoms that I see, right? Cough, nasal discharge. Well, that's actually rare for cats to develop. So they usually develop what we call neurologic disease. So the virus affects the brain and the spinal cord, and these animals tend to die very quickly. So it's very difficult to assess. And these animals come in basically out and about. They just don't, they feel they don't they're non-responsive, and then the history is really what gives us information as to whether the animal needs to be tested, such as contact with poultry, eating uh, raw foods, drinking milk, etc., which is really what really provides a lot of the information that we need to do additional testing. Next. The CDC actually it was interestingly enough, because they actually published a paper on these two particular cases of um, avian influenza in cats, and I think the reason why I actually put it up here was so you could actually see a little bit more of what the clinical case looks like: decreased appetite, lack of grooming, disoriented, lethargy, neurologic the neurologic disease component is the big one that we're seeing. And in some cases, it was actually pretty severe and they died. In some cases, it was very mild and they recovered. So because it's a new condition to the feline population, the mortality rate tends to be high, as I said before, but we are seeing cats survive avian influenza, which means that we probably would see a little bit more survival as time goes on. And we see that with any new emerging infection, both in humans and in animals. Early on, high mortality rate. Later on, most people survive, most people, animals will survive, and they'll just survive and then move on. Next. And so this other one is this is the MMWR, the CDC document. I just wanted to highlight that one of them had actually facial swelling, which is something that we would never think about as potentially being related to avian influenza. And then the neurologic disease really was probably kind of the key component and the reason why the animal would have been considered to be a potential avian influenza case. And as you can see, cat 2B did not have any clinical symptoms, even though the animals were in the same household, sharing the same food, the same litter box, the same everything. So very, very important. One component here is the human component. And in this case, these cats were exposed to an individual that worked for the milking company world, and the individual had his clothing was exposed and splashed with milk. His boots and his clothes and his especially his shoes were actually potentially contaminated with avian influenza, which is potentially how these animals became infected. So key to success, and the one thing that we've seen in multiple situations and even throughout history, is that the virus can actually survive even in your hair. So it's a virus that can actually be carried by clothing, by hair, by shoes, by fomites, which is sometimes how humans get it, by touching something that somebody else with influenza has touched, and then taking that to the nose or mouth, and then potentially infected themselves. So very diverse in terms of the potential for exposure. It's not only now you were expanding from drinking milk, eating meat, and probably contact with feces to potentially contact with contaminated shoes, contaminated clothing that has been splashed with milk, or even hair that could have had viral particles in it that could actually be expose an animal. Next. So we talk about protection, and that's kind of one of the things that we remind veterinarians about is making sure that if they think that they're dealing with a potential case of avian influenza, that they need to protect their mucous membranes. And by that I mean eyes, nose, mouth, and obviously gloves. Clothing should be protected because we just talked about it, right? So clothing could be a potential source of infection for not only for humans but for other animals. And we know that this could actually be a very significant concern. So we do ask people to really protect themselves. And you can see here what the graphic looks like. It's just protect mucous membranes and then protective clothing that would actually prevent exposure to other animals as you remove as you walk around, or may be able to, without necessarily knowing, exposing other animals. One of the things that I remind people, and I do that in clinical practice when I work in practice, is to make sure that we wash our hands after every animal, wash your hands over and over again. Key to success, just because this 10 fingers are really responsible for the transmission of multiple conditions, including influenza. And then beyond that, I um, I do say on a regular basis that you shouldn't be wearing your scrubs to the grocery store, because you're basically spreading potential viruses and bacteria around without necessarily knowing, especially after working either at a human hospital or a veterinary hospital. So I remind people, and when I see people at the store with scrubs, I usually kind of move away very quickly, because I know that who knows what they've been exposed to. Next. And that's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to. Yeah.
I'm getting there. Hi. Thank you so much, Dr. DeVest, for that. I'm going to say a little bit unsettling, but really important information that you shared. And because I get to thank you, I'm also have the opportunity to ask you a couple questions that I have after your presentation. And the first one has got to do with your mention of, I think it was Albany, the cases of cats who acquired avian influenza, we think through exposure to the flock and maybe through the chicken's excrement. And my question has to do with, and I'm going to veer a little maybe off cats a tiny bit, but they're still in here. But dogs and cats oftentimes are interested in bird excrement. At least mine happen to be. I don't know if everyone's, but they kind of go up and they sniff it. They might lick it, especially the dogs. Inferior creatures compared to cats, but they should we be concerned about that as pet owners, and maybe move our bird feeders so it's not in a place where the excrement may be where our pets are? What's your recommendation for that?
That's a great question. Bird feeders. Let's not talk about H5N1. We actually did a really an amazing study with salmonella in bird feeders, infecting not only animals but also humans. So birds can be really a source of a lot of different infections, right? Removing that from the area where pets, dogs or cats may be present, it's a very intelligent thing to do. Not only because of avian influenza, which may or may not be in those birds, but also other pathogens like Campylobacter and Salmonella, which are gastrointestinal conditions. In this particular study that we did, we actually this dog had a wood stick that actually got embedded in the gum and went to the and developed an abscess, right? So went to the university, they removed the wood stick and were able to culture the abscess in the mouth, and they actually got this particular salmonella bacteria that's related to songbirds. So again, there, there are many ways in which you can actually not only can get one pathogen, but multiple pathogens, and keeping them away from your living area for where your animals are at is a good idea. Not only for avian influenza, but other pathogens as well.
Okay, so I know I'm one person who will be moving my bird feeder from the side of our deck to somewhere further away at the edge of our property. I'll share it with my neighbors. Hey, my second question for you, and then we'll go to some other ones. Was you talked about Minnesota being the problem with our raw meat, and obviously I know as a veterinarian, most veterinarians are not do not support or recommend feeding raw meat regardless of avian influenza. It's not a great idea, but my question actually has to do with a little bit of interstate commerce and public health inspections and how did it get from Minnesota across to Oregon? Are we doing routine screening in raw meat and just some of it or does it not happen at all when it gets transported and it's
it could have, so some areas are not well regulated. Let's just be polite about it. And in some cases, if they didn't test for avian influenza, they would have never known, right? Only until it got here and cats ended up dying, and then the only connection was not being outside, being indoor cats, but eating raw food, right? So the epidemiology, which is what I do, the investigation is what kind of leads you to that particular, and then you go back and test the meat and then go back to the property and then they realize that they have a right? So it all kind of comes together as particular pathogens are not, you're not, raw meats are not tested for every pathogen. If that was the case, turkeys are well known to have salmonella. You would never move a turkey or a chicken out of the state ever, right? Because they all have salmonella, they have Campylobacter, they potentially can have an avian influenza. It's just a matter of, one of those conditions that you'll find in birds, and an avian influenza was not part of what they were testing for.
So once again, good recommendation not to eat raw ourselves and our pets. No raw bird food.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Karen, who's gonna, I think, put some other questions. Thanks again.
There are questions for both of you. I'm just gonna wrap up with you, Emilio, with one of the questions was, did you share that cows are carriers from bird to cat, but not typically ill themselves, or are cows presenting symptoms as well?
Cows are presenting symptoms themselves. So remember, it's kind of interesting, right? So cats can die of the disease, right? Cows usually get what we call low milk production, and most of them tend to survive and then just move on from there. So most of them have some sort of an illness. Rarely they'll die. Most of them will have, like I said, low milk production, which if their function is to produce milk and they're not producing milk, then somebody's going to notice. It's usually all automated. The machines will basically say, we'll send a message to the manager and say, this cow is not producing enough milk, and they'll pull the cow away and then try to figure it out. But they're considered to be a carrier. I'm not sure that's a right word, but they actually can have the disease, and they can transmit it through the milk to both humans and animals. And I think some early human infections that we saw were in people that worked at dairies. And I was a milker. We used to work at a dairy. I used to drink raw milk. I know that we all do it because it's available, because otherwise you're going to throw it away. And so potentially the exposure is there not only to animals, but also to humans.
Well, thank you so much for so much insight. I certainly hope the indicators out there are that the avian flu is headed into quiet period and not into something more broadly communicable. Well, Dr. Ellingson, we have a couple of questions for you. One of them, Chris, was what's the best way to determine your cat's age if you haven't had them since they were a kitten?
That's a really good question. Because we certainly get a lot of kitties that have been brought from shelters, and the shelter, somebody rescued this kitty and brought it to the shelter, and they had to guess at an age. And we might see that kitty a number of years later that was guessed to be 2 at the time the client adopted it. And then 5 years later, I'm like, no, this kitty's more like 12, so it's really can be difficult in the in-between years. It's pretty easy to guess an age of a young cat before they're 1 or 2, and an old cat when they've got, tartar and other rickety diseases and such, or they look like they've been through a lot. It's the in-between years that can be really tough. So we look at their teeth and see how much tartar is built up. So that can be a clue. And just again, their general demeanor, and like if they got a kitty that looks a little arthritic, I'm going to guess older than younger. So that's a tough one, but we just kind of have to do our best. And I know the shelters do their best as well when they're trying to give an estimate of what these kitties are to be adopted out into families. So we're not always right. We can also look at eyes. One other thing, looking at eyes, because an older kitty may start having some not true cataracts, but it's called lenticular sclerosis, that the lens which sits behind the pupil that dilates, and behind that starts getting a little cloudier with age. And so the pupils dilate a little bit more to let more light in because that's cloudy. So when they start showing that, I'm going to guess 12, little older, that type of thing. So we do have a few clues. Eyes, maybe nails, looking at the nails, if they got those thick, crusty nails instead of the nice, So there's a few ways we can tell, but once they kind of get older, as opposed to that in between, 2 to 7 or 8, I don't know, that could be a toss up.
All right, well, it's nice you have your kitty on your shoulders to.
She's got real demanding today. She's the one that was in the picture. Yeah, she's gotten demanding this afternoon. I don't know why, so I'm just giving her attention.
Oh, she loves it. You spent a bit of time on arthritis, and I know there's an injection that seems to, is it a Silencia? If that's
it's for pain. Yeah.
So yeah, how is that different from other pain meds, or how does it work?
Technically, it's a monoclonal antibody that works on nerve growth factor. How about that for a good explanation, right? So nerve growth factor actually is in different sites in the body as a, at the molecular level. And this one designed specifically for cats. It is very cat specific. Dogs have their own. But they determine that joints have nerve growth factor, that if we block it with this injectable, it's a once a month injection, it can make these kitties feel better. And I've definitely seen very positive results with my kitties and many of our patients. Rare to have an adverse effect, but kitties this age have a lot of things going on. So we have to kind of try to dissect that. Is the adverse effect that we think is from the injection actually one of the disease progression in this kitty? So it's been a great boon and is available. Just have to have that conversation with your veterinarian if the kitty is appropriate. And it means kitty has to go in once a month for the injection. So that's not always going to work for a lot of clients or a lot of cats, quite frankly. So.
Well, that's great to know. We have another one that came in for you, Dr. DeBess. My partner likes putting a leash on one of our cats and letting it go outside. Should we stop doing this until the current avian influenza scare has passed?
That's a good question. I don't think the avian influenza, I think avian influenza is here to stay. I think you need to, I think you need to be thoughtful about kind of what you're doing. If you're concerned about bird feces in the yard or anything like that, you can wipe off the feet. I, I would continue to do what you're doing, and not to worry about it so much. I think if you were to see a die off of avian influenza, you'll know it very quickly because there'll be a lot of dead birds around. And I hate to scare people. I hate to create panic within the population when we don't really know the extent of what we're seeing. We do see some cases throughout the state where it's not all throughout the state of Oregon. It's, we haven't seen any cases in the Portland area, other than those that were related to raw foods, but no contact with birds that could potentially have avian influenza. So I would say keep on doing what you're doing. When the time comes and this becomes a more severe problem, we'll let you know. Believe me, we're gonna be out there telling you, stop what you're doing, protect your animals, whatever happens to be the case. For now, I don't think you need to worry about it.
Well, thank you for your thorough information and being a resource, not only today, but in the future. And just knowing that individuals like yourself, and I'm sure many, many others, are keeping an eye out and really on the forefront of it all. We're really grateful. So thank you for sharing this with us. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah.
And Dr. Ellingson, lovely to get your information on what to do with these kitties that just don't stay young long enough and stay in our hearts for forever. So really appreciate you helping us learn some things on how to keep them comfortable and as they age. Wait, oh wait, but did I miss out? There might have been one that's still, there's one more that's snuck in. Do people want to just stay for just a few more minutes if you're interested? One is there a feline H5N1 vaccine being worked on?
No.
Easy answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Fair enough.
No. Vaccines are difficult to make. Vaccines take a lot of effort. The influenza vaccine is, although we get it every year and we think it's a piece of cake, it's not. They have some vaccines for humans. The CDC has about 3 different vaccines candidates that they have for humans in case of a pandemic or a large outbreak or an epidemic of some sort. But even those, they're difficult, they're expensive, and they should only be used in situations in which it becomes a really significant problem. So nothing for dogs, nothing for cats, some for human, and I think we're at the tune of 1 to 2 million in vaccines available in humans, so not very much at all. But we have 3 great candidates, meaning vaccines that could be produced quickly if necessary.
Good to know. Great, great, great. Well, this concludes our annual meeting. Thank you, Dr. DeBeth and Dr. Ellingson, and thank you, Board of Directors, for all of your support, involvement, and leadership. And to everyone who attended today or is watching this afterwards, we really appreciate you looking after cats in our community and supporting our work. So I hope everyone has a great evening.